Byakuya Kuchiki is a man that wears many hats, and it's ironic. He's head of the clan, captain of Goten 13, and a stance character. My man can do a lot of things at once, and I'm going to be breaking down just why Byakuya Kuchiki is probably one of the best characters in Bleach Rebirth of Souls. But first,
run that shit back!
Byakuya is a stance character, and if you're not familiar with a stance character, in fighting games, those characters are fighters who can switch between different combat modes or stances. Each stance offers a different kind of moveset, properties, or even playstyle that gives them a different variety and versatility, that gives them a different, unique approach depending on the fighting style. Stance characters often have to have a strategic thinking and have a mastery of combat so that way they can use their techniques in variety of modes effectively. Many times you'll have to understand how to switch between the stances in the middle of a fight depending on which is going to benefit you most. With Byakuya, he'll be switching between his sealed state of Senbon Sakura, which has a high attack power and is good for close quarter combat, and the release state of Senbon Sakura, the SHIKAI, which has a wide attack range and is good for mid-range combat. You can change the distance that suits you best to your advantage. Its strength is in its versatility, which allows it to force a distance that is weak against any opponent. In Awakening, it will no longer be able to change forms, but its attack performance at mid-range will increase, making it possible to push through an opponent in one go after maintaining an advantageous position. When we look at the battle data, we see that his ease of use is a 3-star character out of 5. So he is not the easiest to pick up. He has an attack of 2, speed of 2, range of 5, durability 3, and technique 4. And he's a pretty well balanced character with all his parameters in mind and what he can do. With his signature move, he can switch between sealed and release states. So he can seal his sword and make it a whole sword, or he can release it and make it his SHIKAI. In the release state, it can handle long range attacks and can deal with opponents out of their range. It's important to understand when the right stance is most advantageous. If you're fighting someone that is a close quarter fighter, like a rushdown like Ichigo, you'll be able to deal damage at a close quarter range, or if you want to keep them at bay, you can maintain the distance and do your release state. Then therefore you keep the distance while still maintaining your attack. It just depends on your attack style and how you're attacking, and also how you're reacting to your opponent. With your spiritual pressure technique 1, it will release and seal your Senbon Sakura. Sound familiar? Because your signature move does that as well. What it's doing here is, depending on which state you're in, it will either release or seal your sword. So what you can do with this is you can alternate between your signature move and your spiritual technique 1. If you know you need to be in your other state, but you want to deal some damage at the same time and also position them in a certain distance, whether it be pushing them back or getting them closer, you can do this to do so. When you release your technique, it pulls in the opponent. So when you get a mid-range stance, you'll be able to pull in the opponent, and when you are sealing it, it blows them away. It sounds like when you are releasing it, it creates a situation where you may want to immediately become aggressive. Whereas if you are blowing them away by sealing it, you're giving yourself a chance to breathe. Now you could use it in different modes or in different means, but that's how I would look at it, being that you're pushing them back with the sealed state and you are pulling them in with your release state. With your spiritual pressure technique 2, While blocking an opponent's attack, you can counterattack with a Sokutsui. It has an invincible period when it is activated, and so there'll be a few frames in which you'll not be able to be damaged. Essentially, it's a counterattack with a Kido at the end. In your Bankai state, you'll be fixed in a form that excels in mid-range combat. While his mid to long range techniques are strengthened, he is weak to close quarter combat, so he'll need to keep his opponents at bay, essentially meaning that he does have to play keep away. Although he can switch between mid to long range combat and does have close range combat, it's not as strong as his mid to long range. Similar to Gin. Now, what does this all mean for Byakuya? Well, let's break it down. When Byakuya starts a match, he's going to need to quickly analyze just how he wants to fight in the battle. As a stance character, you'll want to gauge what distance will be optimal for the battle. With rushdown characters, you might want to take a mid to long range stance, and with long range characters, you might want to get a little bit closer so that way you can close in the gap if you need to. Now, you might be able to play the long game and might be able to play a long range with a long range character, but it might be to your favor to be in a mid-range stance or maybe even close range stance, since you have the option to do so while you're at base state. Once you've gauged how you want to take control of the battle, you'll want to start doing some quick attacks. Now, that could be in SHIKAI state. Released would mean some mid to long range attacks. While in the sealed state, you're going to do some close range attacks. So you'll want to decide in which state you'll want to be in, and there is an indicator down below right above your reverse gauge that will tell you in which state you're at. Keep in mind, this gauge does go away once you are in Bankai. You'll want to stay moving with Byakuya, and a lot of times you'll want to try to do a lot of feints. It appears that he has Byakuya as a quick attack, as it does appear that it is accumulating spiritual pressure. It seems that Byakuya allows you to accumulate spiritual power, which makes me think that it's a quick attack. In either case, it is a fairly mid-range setup. It does require a little bit of range, and you can see it obviously happening, but you can use it as a feint or use it in succession of a combo. You'll want to understand the range of your attacks, as some attacks may not hit if you're not within that range. A part of me even speculates that it might be favorable to stay in base state, since your only real advantage as Bankai is that you have increased long range and mid range, and your close range is weakened. So in the event that you're playing a close range battle, you may want to stay in SHIKAI unless you absolutely need the Kikon move boost. Now, something that I saw that I felt was a high tier move that was done accidental was during the VA tournaments. You see that the VA using Byakuya gets Yoriichi to soul break, but before they do something critical, they do evolution. So I feel like that's going to be something, that, you know, a sweat would think about is, hey, let me get them to soul break, but before I do, let me go up one so that way I can really boost up how much I can get. It really maximized and turned the battle in his favor. So it's something that really anyone should do. But I've seen a lot of battles where they just go for the quick Kikon move and they don't go for the soul break. And I get it, because obviously you have to go all the way down and get their, you know, reishi to 0. And that's much harder than just going to 30% or just breaking their guard or just getting them while they're vulnerable. So it's understandable, but the soul break really is the ideal way to maximize the damage you're doing to their soul. With that in mind, some key weaknesses is that close range is not his most favorable distance. Now, while he does have a way to blow them away and get them close, in base he does have it to some degree, but just like it being lore accurate, when he gets into Bankai, he is severely weakened at close range. Also, his speed is not very favorable, and I can understand why they had to balance him. And also thinking about things, he's got okay speed, but when you really think about it, he's not faster than Yoruichi. Even when Yoruichi was carrying Ichigo on her back, she was still faster than him. So although I know Yoruichi's a 5, he could be like a 3 maybe, it's understandable why he's not the fastest character, because he really is not as fast as he claims to act like it because he has flashed up. But that being said, one thing that I find to be very lore accurate, he's got a lot of Kido in his moveset. Even in his Kikon move, he looks like he's doing a Bakudo, where he seals you for a moment before he hits you with his Senbon Sakura. Now, one thing that I've been speculating is that, given that this is so lore accurate, I think that Byakuya is going to be one of those characters that can hold Renji while in his Bankai. And what I mean is that if we recall the battle, Byakuya mentions to Renji that because his Bankai is unrefined and because how large it is, by shooting Kido at his Bankai, he can effectively restrict his Bankai and keep it at bay. Almost kind of like a clash, to where even how when Rukia and Byakuya clashed with his petals against her sword, it still was a clash, even though one was clearly a sea of petal blades while another was a full sword. And so similarly, it's my belief that his Kido should be able to somewhat clash against Renji's Zabimaru, and therefore effectively restricting it to some way where, during an attack by chance. Now, it may come to where it's attack priority, where the stronger attack or the first attack may end up taking priority, but I'm willing to bet there's going to be some way that you can tech out of it. Something about the whole lore accuracy of everything, and how Byakuya can just shoot out Kido like it's nothing. I really feel like they're really going through all the lore accurate things, and so I feel like Kido is really going to be able to disrupt Renji's Bankai. Maybe not even completely stop the attack, but at least disrupt it to some extent. It seems that when Ichigo was doing this move, Byakuya was able to disrupt the very beginning of his spiritual technique. The only difference is that with this attack, Ichigo is invulnerable, and so he was able to clash against maybe the first hit, but everything else was able to still go through since there was several hits, and ultimately this attack had priority, is what I interpret from this frame. Overall, Byakuya has some insane range, and he can get you from very, very far away, and he can also surprise you from up close. Even his guard break is pretty neat. Byakuya has some very obvious weaknesses, especially in Bankai. He has his safe zone. In the safe zone, there is an area within Byakuya's radius that he cannot have his petals fly through, or else it would do him damage. So for that reason, Byakuya cannot do many close range attacks. He has to have a sword be created with his petals, and then he then can do a slash or a sword attack. Due to this lore accurate fact, Byakuya is very weak up close range. Now, he does have some abilities that he can do to push you back, but you have to take advantage of this if you're fighting against Byakuya. If you are Byakuya, you have to understand all the techniques that you can do, whether it be Kido like Sokutsui. Of course, you can land a combo that can push them back as well, but you're going to want to be considerate of the fact that everyone may know that your weakness is close range, so they're going to want to rush you and maybe even flash step you to get in close. So keep in mind that your weakness is very much exposed. Also, since you don't have much speed, if you let someone like Yoruichi get in, she may be able to really deal some damage very fast. So you might want to stay one step ahead of them, maybe even throwing your petals ahead of time. And at that point, you'll know that you'll be able to keep the enemy at bay, because it'll be almost like a threat, like, hey, don't come here, my petals will cut you up. Or you can time them perfectly to trap your opponent if the combo allows you to. Keep in mind, a lot of feints may do the job where you trip them up and then give them a surprise attack. There's a lot of ways in which Byakuya can be handled, but it's really up to you on what you decide to do. Ultimately, Byakuya is very promising. He's got a lot of mechanisms, but I really think he's going to be one of the most top tier characters. He's definitely going to be one of the most well used characters, but I feel like a lot of people are going to get tripped up by the stance archetype. And so I hope this video has helped. Let me know if it's helped down below in the comments and what you think of Byakuya. This has been your boy Saint Irving. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.